70% of families will lose their wealth by the second generation, and 90% will lose their wealth by the third. And that means that fortune built by a grandparent is often gone before it reaches the grandchild. And families are often seeing their fortunes diminish over time. And it's not just because of bad investments or taxes. The number one reason is that the children were not prepared to receive it on multiple levels. There's no education, no communication, and no plan.
You're listening to Property Investor Tales, stories from the front yard.
Hi and welcome back to Property Investor Tales. Today we're talking about something massive. Not just a theory and not just a trend, but a once in a generation shift that's already shaping our society. We're talking about the evolution of the Australian dream and the $6.2 trillion intergenerational wealth transfer that's already underway. Now, Sam has already done a podcast on this, which we'll link in the description below. He talks about how it's reshaping real estate and the economy itself. But today, I'm taking the viewpoint of an advisor who works alongside colleagues that have heard the heartfelt stories of thousands of our clients as they navigate wealth and property. And it starts here. For decades, the Australian dream was simple, right? Work hard, buy a home, retire with a bit of super. That was the path. But let's be honest, that dream is slipping out of reach for a lot of people. And we hear about it day by day in the work that we do. So in cities like Sydney and Melbourne, the median house price is now more than 10 times the average income. And Sam calls this out clearly, right? Australia is at a crossroads. The traditional path, so job plus mortgage plus super, is no longer guaranteeing security. So the question is, if the old dream is fading, what is going to take its place? And Sam's answer? It's property investing. Not just for yourself, but for your family's future. Because property does something that wages never can. It grows while you sleep. It builds capital and cash flow. And when structured right, it can be passed on intact across generations. But today's episode isn't about income. It's about legacy. And legacy is something that you build over time, right? By understanding the market, using leverage wisely, and thinking beyond your lifetime. So why does this matter? Right now, as Sam said in his podcast, economists estimate that there's $6.2 trillion in wealth that will move from older Australians to the younger generations over the next coming decades. But here's the problem. Many families and advisors aren't ready. And in some of the conversations that we have with clients, they want to leave gifts for their kids. They want to, it's not enough, however, because some of them are putting their own actual retirements at risk, which essentially is just kicking the can down the road and putting the burden around the corner. Others have no estate plan at all, and it leaves their kids more with stress and not security. And then we've got the question of recipients. They're not feeling confident managing what's coming and start dabbling in investments as it slowly erodes that gift rather than capitalizing on it. So it's a real risk, right? But it's also a once in a lifetime opportunity. Because according to Sam and his Urban Property Investor podcast, that $6.2 trillion of wealth, it's got to go somewhere. And logically speaking, that wealth will be transferred to the children and grandchildren of those that earned it. And the generations, so these are the builders and the boomers that built up that wealth, and it's especially in real estate, they've lived frugally, right? They bought early, they held on long, and now that capital is starting to flow downstream. But here's the kicker. The next generation, they're wired differently. So while boomers might flinch at like a $3 muffin, millennials are having $7 iced almond lattes, or is that just me? Sam says these people are loaded, but they're frugal, and you cannot get money out of their back pocket. And it's not being rude or anything. It's just the reality. And then we've got millennials and Gen Z. Well, they're spenders. They're the renovators. They're the investors. And they're more likely to put their inheritance straight back into the economy, and especially into real estate. And this, as Sam explains it, is what causes a structural shift in the market, because the real estate values don't just grow, they're shifting. And when there's more money coming into the funnel, it changes the landscape of the product that we're purchasing and how we interact with it. So if you're asking where the next wave of demand is coming from, it's coming from this. The kids of boomers are cashing in on their inheritance and they're putting it to work. But will that wealth last? So let's take a step back and ask what actually happens when the wealth changes hands. And there's an age-old saying, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. And sadly, it's backed by data. 70% of families will lose their wealth by the 2nd generation, and 90% will lose their wealth by the 3rd. And that means that fortune built by a grandparent is often gone before it reaches the grandchild. And families are often seeing their fortunes diminish over time. And it's not just because of bad investments or taxes. The number one reason is that the children were not prepared to receive it on multiple levels. There's no education, no communication, and no plan. So while Australia's boomers and builders, they may be sitting on a big pile of $6.2 trillion worth of wealth, that money is at risk of disappearing without a framework in place. And that's why legacy isn't just what you leave behind, it's what you teach while you're still here. And hey, maybe someone's just sent you this podcast episode. Maybe someone you love, like a parent or a partner or a friend who's been thinking about this stuff, wants you to be a part of the conversation. So if that's you, hi, welcome. They sent you this podcast probably for a reason. It's because they believe you've got a role to play in the family's future. And honestly, they're probably right. So if that's you, pull up a chair. You're now a part of the conversation now. But if you're wondering why I'm so passionate about this and why I care so deeply, it's because I've lived the other side, okay? And I can tell you the reality is that $6.2 trillion worth of wealth, I'm not going to be getting any of it. And there's a reason why. So I'm a country girl. I grew up in Western Queensland, where my dad, he ran his agricultural business with no formal education. But despite all of that, he was an absolute master in his field. He even ended up traveling from, Western Queensland out to Germany to learn from leaders in manufacturing and engineering. But it was his mindset above all else that impacted me. So he taught me to embrace life and opportunity no matter what. And he was the most curious and capable person I ever knew. And the lesson he taught me, I was only ever limited by my mindset and that I could do anything if I was brave enough to try. And he's one of the most important people in my life. And at the age of 58, he died of a heart attack. And in the days that followed, as we emptied his house, we discovered that his life insurance policy had expired. So his property, his business, his machinery, and his intellectual property all vanished. And our family's livelihood disappeared with him. And I'm often asked, how does that happen? How does your dad not renew his life insurance policy, right? Well, anyone with links to small business, farming, or agriculture who are listening, you will know that when your business falls on hard times, sacrifices are made. And yet no one thinks the unthinkable will happen. But it did. When all was said and done, and the last piece of equipment sold off, there was practically nothing left. And that experience changed me for many reasons. And that's why I speak so passionately about planning and about property and protecting your life's work, because legacy isn't automatic. It has to be built, it has to be taught and protected on purpose. So I'll shake up the mood a little bit so it's not so gloomy. Let's bring this full circle, okay? The Australian dream isn't dead. It's evolving. But today, that dream looks like renting for lifestyle, buying for growth, building multiple income streams, learning how to leverage tax and different structures, and most importantly, passing on not just wealth, but wisdom. And we're not trying to own a home, we're trying to own a future and build a legacy that lasts. And here's something that I love about positive real estate. Our founders, Jason and Shay Witten, understood this generational challenge early. They saw the need for families and not just individuals to get aligned with wealth building. And they knew that financial education has to be passed on for it to stick. And that's why when a client joins our mentoring program, their adult children are included for free. Because this isn't just about helping one person buy property, it's about making sure the next generation is ready. It's about preparing families to have the conversations that matter now and not later. We're not just coaching investors, we're helping parents pass on a mindset and a strategy and the confidence so their kids don't have to start from scratch. And I'm speaking from experience. That's legacy in action. So here's the final takeaway. We're living through this $6.2 trillion wealth transfer shift, but the question isn't if it's coming. It's about whether you and the people that you love are ready for it. And if you're not sure where to start or how to bring your family into the conversation, hey, to you listening, that's exactly why we're here. At Positive Real Estate, we believe that legacy starts with education because it isn't about winning the game. It's making sure your children don't start from zero. So whether you're at the beginning of your journey or if you're already halfway there, the invitation is open. Start the conversation. Make a plan and build a legacy that lasts. Okay? Thanks for listening to Property Investor Tales. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone that you love, okay? And stay with us. Tabitha will be back next time with more real talk and some practical insights and legacy building conversations to come. Bye for now.
Hey, thanks for listening to Property Investor Tales. Remember to subscribe so you get notified every time a new episode drops. As you can guess, I love hearing people's property investor tales. So if you'd like to share yours, then please get in touch with me via email at propertyinvestortales@positivementor.com.au. We would also love your feedback, and I would appreciate a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Remember, you can watch all of these podcasts over on YouTube at Positive Mentor or at positivementor.com.au. Until then, take care, happy investing, and bye for now.